Welcome to our channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on videos like this. 107-year-old former slave Jack Riddle and his 86-year-old wife Josie had a run-in with members of the Ku Klux Klan on Christmas Day. The Klan left a radio at the couple's doorstep. At first glance, it might seem like a kind gesture, but the irony behind it was clear. This gift came from an organization known for persecuting African Americans. While the Klan tried to soften its image, the reality was that it had a history rooted in promoting white supremacy. These so-called gifts were part of a dark game aimed at masking racism. As the fight for equality in America continued, actions like these served as a reminder of the painful wounds from the past. The year 1863 marked a significant turning point in New Orleans. Photographs of light-skinned enslaved children had a profound impact on society. Despite looking white, they were legally considered black under the one-drop rule. These photos became a tool to highlight their right to belong in the community and their shared humanity. The powerful imagery shifted perceptions and helped garner support for the establishment of educational institutions for freed slaves. During this time, debates over origins and identity heated up. People began to question how to define true identity and social ties beyond appearances. These discussions reinforced the importance of freedom and the right to equal education. The steps taken in New Orleans laid a crucial foundation for building a more just society. In Alabama, slave owners used a brutal device known as the bell rack, designed to catch slaves trying to escape. A metal collar with a bell was placed around the neck, alerting the owner to every movement. During an escape attempt, the sound of the bell would put an end to the search for freedom, and a belt strapped around the waist further restricted movement, making it nearly impossible to run. This device wasn't just a tool to prevent escape, it was also a constant reminder to the slaves that they were being watched at all times, symbolizing fear and control. This photo reflects the legacy of slavery in late 19th century Brazil. In the frame, an enslaved woman is playing with her owner's child. At that time, enslaved women not only performed household chores, but also cared for their owner's children, often forming close bonds with them. To white children, these women were seen as ever-present caregivers or nannies. However, these children grew up in a society that viewed these women as property, leading them to develop a distorted understanding of love and hierarchy. This warped perspective reinforced inequality and discrimination for generations. In 1902, Aboriginal Australians chained up in Wyndham Prison, Western Australia, were often humiliated and mistreated in much the same way as Africans enslaved in different parts of the world. Subjected to inhumane treatment, chained like animals, and stripped of their freedom, the Aboriginal people were forced into policies aimed at civilizing them. These policies had long-lasting effects on indigenous communities, impacts that are still felt today. In 1889, an African American was whipped in a U.S. prison. Although slavery had officially ended in 1865, it continued, especially in southern states, through the prison system, where African Americans were forced into labor and subjected to physical punishment. Prisons were notorious for their harsh conditions, and many former slaves were forced back into labor under minor charges. This is the portrait of Rennie, a slave from South Carolina, taken in 1850 by Harvard University professor Louis Agassiz. Agassiz used pseudo-scientific racial theories like polygenism to try to prove the supposed inferiority of Africans. These theories aimed to highlight differences based on the physical characteristics of human races and were used as a tool to justify slavery. In this 1860 photo, we see Andrew Chandler, a member of the 44th Mississippi Infantry Regiment, and his former slave, Silas Chandler, during the Civil War. Silas accompanied Andrew as his servant throughout the war, but at a critical moment during the Battle of Chickamauga, he saved Andrew's life. After the war, in gratitude, Andrew gave Silas a piece of land. Silas built a church on that land for his community. He continued to live and work in the area where he had been enslaved, but this time as a respected member of his community. Jonathan Walker, known as the Man with the Brand, was an American reformer and abolitionist who was tried and convicted in 1844 for trying to help 7 runaway slaves seek freedom. When he was caught, the U.S. government punished him by branding his hand with the letters SS, which stood for slave stealer. However, this punishment only served to make him a symbol of the abolitionist movement and resistance, rather than silencing him. In this photo, we see a young slave boy holding a log on his head as punishment around 1890 in Zanzibar. At that time, Zanzibar was one of the major centers of the slave trade in the Indian Ocean. Enslaved children were often forced to work in heavy labor and faced harsh punishments for minor offenses. In 1907, an English sailor freed a Swahili slave who had lived in shackles for 3 years by breaking his chains in Oman. This event took place during a patrol by the British Royal Navy in the Indian Ocean, aimed at intercepting slave ships and halting the human trafficking trade. The purpose of these patrols was to rescue captives over a span of decades. In 1911, Sarah Breedlove, known as Madam C.J. Walker, drove her new car, becoming the first woman in the U.S. to become a millionaire through her own efforts. As the daughter of a former slave, she built an empire around beauty products and amassed a fortune of $1 million. Walker used her success to support civil rights and educate and empower the Black community. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated with intriguing visuals and stories. Don't forget to enable notifications so you won't miss our latest content.